Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jay. He's Maddie. This is Yankee and the Brit Sports Talk. And today we're going to recap the Wildcard Weekend. That was pretty crazy. Like, the games weren't all that exciting on some of them. And Maddie, I know it's going to be a rough one. And let's just get it out the way. Let's start with your Cowboys before I even let you feel bad on TV or on the show. I'm just going to say it all came down to the fact that you had really no rushing game, 77 yards, you gave up 5 sacks, gave up almost 170 yards rushing. And even if they get that ball spotted right, there's 2 or 3 Cowboys offside as soon as Dak snaps that at the end of the game. But I have to ask, even Marshawn Lynch has to ask, what the hell are you doing running the ball?
So I didn't hate the play call, if that's any consolation to anybody, because if you saw the lineup, so it was Cowherd that really pissed me off because it just clearly showed that I didn't really watch what was going on in the backfield a little bit, but they had everybody lining up on the backfield. Like on the sideline, there was no way that there was a ball going to go to the sideline. So you either take 2 shots to the end zone from 40 yards out, or you get 1 shot from 20. But really, they should have just taken it from 25 and they would have downed the ball properly. But that's not where the game ended. If you're relying on a Hail Mary attempt, 1 shot into the end zone from 25 yards out, then you don't really deserve to win the game anyway. Where we lost the game was we lost it before we even got in there. We lost it when we hired Mike McCarthy last year, as far as I'm concerned. Because, 77 rush yards. 77 rush yards isn't a terrible... It's not a horrendous rushing game, to be perfectly honest. Like, you're looking to get about 100, but with the amount of pass yards this team can put up when it really wants to, then that's not too much of an issue. What is an issue is 14 penalties. 14 penalties is horrendous. That's a ridiculous amount of penalties. There are games where both sides don't put up 14 penalties. We're the first team in NFL history to have 14 penalties awarded to them twice in a game, in a year, in a season. So twice in a season we've had 14 penalty games. And that for me comes down to the coaching. And as you mentioned, on the last play of the game, you have 3 or 4 Cowboys players offside because they're not rushing back to the ball. You can see them, and they're guys that don't play big minutes either. So those guys that don't play big minutes, like Noah Brown, number 85, I'm pretty sure that's his name, tight end who was on the pitch. He was jogging back. He jogged back into position when we'd rushed the ball and we needed to spike it, and that just shows this team's lack of energy and it's poor coaching and it's poor routines. Like they don't have that. And I think somebody like Dan Quinn would drill those routines into them straight away because the defense doesn't give up many penalties apart from penalties that every team gives up, which is stuff like pass interference, which happens all the time. So I'm not going to kill them for pass interference penalties.
Well, to make your day even worse, I'm pretty sure Dan Quinn's going to be the new head coach of the Denver Broncos. But you could get to keep Kellen Moore, it looks like. Nobody seems to want him anymore after the play calling, and he seems to be the one who's going to miss out on the carousel if all the talking heads are correct on what they're hearing from teams and who's going to end up coaching where. I don't know, man. I got to ask, where was CeeDee Lamb in the biggest moments? Like, where are you?
He's not really had that big of a season this year. Let's be perfectly honest here. Like the hype around CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup was better than him this season. Like when Michael Gallup wasn't injured. When Gallup was on the field, he was better than CeeDee Lamb this season. And Gallup is this person they need to sign and he'll get over those injuries. And I would have trusted Gallup in that. If we were throwing the Hail Marys, I would have trusted Gallup more than I would have trusted any of the other receivers to go up and get that ball. Amari Cooper's not that guy. He's a route runner, fantastic route runner, absolutely incredible. And CeeDee Lamb should be that guy, but he's just been off the ball this season. I think our defense as well wasn't as explosive. They didn't really turn up to play in the first quarter, and then in the first and second quarters, they didn't turn up to play. And then in the second half, they absolutely brutalized the 49ers. So where was that? Like Mike McCarthy just doesn't get them wired up to play. It was the same under Jason Garrett. They've hired these puppets for Jerry Jones, and by being a puppet, they have no fire, so they don't send out the team to play. And I just think it's like I see this loss as down to coaching. A lot of it see it as Dak Prescott. I wouldn't blame Dak Prescott for our loss. Like he spent a lot of time getting abused by the 49ers O-line. Let's be real. Like he spent a lot of time running for his life. So I'm not going to blame it on Dak, although I think he could have played better.
Well, before I get to Dak, I will say where the 49ers are a bad matchup for people is they can come out in 22 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, and then all of a sudden, because of the players they have that are pretty much positionless, like Debo and Juszczyk and these guys, they can drop into an empty set, and now the defense doesn't have the right personnel on the field, so it's really confusing for a lot of teams, and that's where they get you with a lot of motion. I do know that I seen a meme that made me laugh that said, "Can somebody get Mike McCarthy Madden so he can learn clock management like the rest of us did?" And then I just think that Dak's kind of proven this whole second half of the year that he's average.
You've cut out on me. I can't.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Oh, there we go. I can hear you now. Like
okay,
just that
great.
last bit of the
last
sentence.
thing I said was the second half of the year, I think Dak's proved he's average.
And now I can't hear you again. Like you just cut out there again.
Can you hear me now?
What's going on?
Did that help at all?
Yeah. Whatever that was, that helped.
All right. I was saying that over the second half of the year, it seems to me like Dak's proven that he's just an average quarterback.
I would say average is possibly harsh, but I do understand where the criticism is coming from. I'd say average is harsh. I think there's a lot to be kind of desired in the play calling at times. And I don't think that's down to Kellen Moore. Like it is only his second year in the job. That's fine. I think the offensive line's been beaten up. That offensive line. It was something like the 5th or 6th time they've played together this season. Like those 5 in the offensive line. I think Taylor Biadasz needs to learn like what he's doing. I think a lot of those pre-snap false starts, I think they can be tracked back to Biadasz. I think Connor Williams needs to learn how to not hold. I think that would be fantastic. But just to bring it back to Dak, he's not been as incredible as he has been at other spots. I think he's shown enough times that he's got the game in him to be considered better than average. But in the big spots this year, I'd have to agree. And that's one thing that I would always say about Dak Prescott. Like I could always trust him in a big spot, but this year he's not had it. And the whole team just hasn't been right for the second half of the season. And I still think it comes down to coaching or the culture that has been set up. I think they got on their high horse a little too quickly. They started to feel themselves a bit too much. And I think that's down to Mike McCarthy and Joe in the or whatever in Hard Knocks. Like you've got big enough personalities on that team that you don't need to be the one blowing them up. We need somebody who keeps them level and just keeps them playing as hard as they can. Our defense is young and it's going to come back next season firing again. It nearly kept us in the game. Honestly, there has never been a better incomplete catch than George Kittle's incompletion that got knocked out for a fumble and totally incomplete. I thought like a lot of Cowboys fans are blaming the refs. I just want to move on to this before we give the 49ers their dues. And because I'm sick of talking about the Cowboys. I'm sick of hearing them in the news. Like they're out. We'll see them next year. They know they didn't play well. Let's see what happens. But just to move on to the refs and why Cowboys fans should be upset and not so upset with the refs. So every penalty that they called on the Dallas Cowboys was fair. All 14 were penalties. There was not a penalty on the Dallas Cowboys that should not have been a penalty. However, when you look at the 49ers, and we were texting each other about Trent Williams throughout the game, his movements were bigger than the full starts that the Cowboys were getting. So the 49ers got away with a few full starts there from Trent Williams. And I think that's just his name that's stopping him from getting those full starts, rather than like if Connor Williams or Tyler Biadasz moved as much as Trent Williams was moving, they were giving it as a full start. Lyle Collins' leg went like that, and they gave it as a full start, which is a full start. But Trent Williams' legs, like, they wave around like this at the start of each bloody play, and he doesn't get called for it. Also, there was a mishold on Micah Parsons. There was quite a few misholds. He's been getting them all year. But especially on the first touchdown, there was a mishold. But that was down to interpretation. I just feel like they were giving it to the Cowboys and not giving them as much to the 49ers because the 49ers play hard and that kind of stuff. So the refs called every single play right against the Dallas Cowboys, and the refs aren't the reason that we lost the game, but they weren't calling the same level of penalty.
The only thing I got to say about the refs is what Dak said about the refs and getting shit thrown at them after the game was totally classless.
Yeah, that's disgusting. Like, that's one of the main things that Dak Prescott gets is his amazing intangibles. And I think that just shows they were kind of a sulky team and a sulky organization this year with the way that they went out. And I think it's disgusting. I'd say Mike McCarthy. I think it's his culture built this and made us or put him in an advisory role, whatever you have to do in order to not pay him as much money in a payout, whatever. But it shows how rough of a coach Mike McCarthy is when Matt LaFleur's gone 3 seasons with 13 wins after he left. Like, you know, I mean, Rodgers is going to be back-to-back MVP when Mike McCarthy left. It just doesn't look easy when he's on the field. But let's give the 49ers their dues. The 49ers played to their strengths, and Deebo Samuels is an animal. If they get Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm fine with Jimmy, but if they get a better quarterback, they'll be absolutely unstoppable next year. Kyle Juszczyk, for me, was their MVP because he just seemed to be everywhere. But obviously, they'll give it to Deebo Samuels because he's on the pitch, playing more. He shows up more.
Those are two guys who pretty much play positionless. You can move them all over that offense. But since you were talking about the refs, let's move on to a game where the refs are nothing but the topic of conversation. And that's the Raiders versus the Bengals. And I know everybody's talking about the blown whistle touchdown. I got a question on why nobody is even bringing up the fact that the first touchdown the Bengals scored in that game wasn't a touchdown, and they never even reviewed it. If you go back and watch the replay, as the ball is hitting his hands, he is being hit by the safety, which right away is now the receiver has to take that ball, catch it, and go all the way to the ground because he did not possess it before getting hit. But yet he drops the ball before he gets back up. That's the same thing that happened to Megatron. That's the same thing that happened to Sidney Rice. It's the same thing that happened to Des Bryant. Why are we not talking about this?
I think with that after how on it they were in the regular season with things like that and drop catches and pass interference and all that kind of stuff, in the playoffs they're seeming to they're holding the whistle more and letting the guys play. And I think that's what led to that. And I'm not saying whether it's right or not, but it should lead to some. It should lead to the defenders actually being able to defend.
That's all I wanted. I just wanted a review because I'm like, this is way too big of a game, and every scoring should be reviewed, and you blow it as clear. And if anybody else saw this, they're thinking to themselves, at least go to review, and then we'll have time for whoever the talking head is on whichever channel it was can tell us why it's a catch, because every other time it had been. And I hate to shit on the Bengals, but it's like if you take away them 14 points and give them 3 each time, that's 6. The Raiders win by 1 without even having to worry about it.
Yeah, obviously the game plan changes in that. Like the Bengals were running off the clock. I think the Bengals are a better team than the Raiders. They showed they were a better team as far as I'm concerned.
I think the Raiders actually played a better game, and I think they got hosed 2 big times that cost them 14 points. And I don't usually blame the refs. I shit on the refs, but I don't usually blame the refs. And this is one where I think they have a real argument, and then a statement came out from the NFL that none of these refs will be reffing any other playoff games after that.
Yeah, that blown whistle call is the reason that they're not the reason that they're not reffing any more games. That blown whistle call is incredible. We were talking to each other at the time, saying about how I was going to bat for the Bengals on this, where I said, well, it's going to be a catch anyway, and Joe Burrow wasn't out of bounds, so they did come to the right decision eventually. But the rule is, if you blow the whistle, that play is called dead while the ball is in the air. And Joe Burrow being out of bounds is not, if he doesn't make the touchdown, if the touchdown doesn't count, it is not a reviewable play. So therefore, by the rules, they cost the Raiders 7 points. Now, that's not to say that.
Wait. But you say that it didn't matter, but these guys run 4-2-4-4. So if you stop a half second early or a second early, and that corner never even put his hands up, never even tried to put his hands up because he heard the whistle. I just argue we don't know for sure what would have happened if that whistle wouldn't have blown. And that's why I think it's such a travesty. I think that's why it was such a awful thing. If you get that touchdown, great. But one, they should have never blown the whistle too early because, again, the refs lined up in the wrong spot. He's not where he's supposed to be to see if Burrow's out of bounds, which isn't on Burrow.
He was in bounds by quite a long way. He was in bounds by quite a long way. It's not like his toe was touching any of the white. There was quite clear daylight from where he was. When you're watching it on TV, you're thinking, oh, he's out of bounds. Fine. But then you watch it down the line and he's nowhere near the out of bounds mark at all. It was incredible to me.
I just want to clear up one thing I said. I think the Raiders were a better team that day, not overall.
Yeah. I don't know. The way that the Bengals kind of came out playing, Joe Burrow was throwing the ball, and then in the second half they looked a bit disconjointed. But I think that's because they were in their own heads about running the clock down. The same thing happened with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They didn't look as good in the second half because they were trying to run the clock down when they don't have the players to necessarily run the clock down. If I still think if it was a closer game, then the Bengals would have kept up to those high standards and kept on playing. But yeah, the refs cost the Raiders 7 points at least. We'll see how the rest of the playoffs go to whether it evens itself out on that grounded catch. But you've got to imagine that it won't because of the amount of just because of the way things go with these refs in the NFL. And we're on the side of the refs. We always say if they become professional, then if they're professional, then fair enough.
I just feel so bad for Mike Mayock and Rich Bisaccia because they are both, Mike Mayock's already out and Rich Bisaccia's not going to keep that job. But if he wins that game, he might be able to keep that job in Oakland.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last bit. I think I've fixed the problem now.
If they don't lose that game, I feel bad for Mike Mayock. He's already fired. And Rich Bisaccia might lose his job now, too, it looks like. And if they win that game, they probably get to keep their job for one more year.
Yeah, 100%. I do feel sorry for Rich Bisaccia, especially. I think Mike Mayock's hired enough ropey players to kind of bring it into question, but he's also put together a squad that got to the playoffs.
And if you listen to what he's been saying, it was Gruden. He wanted Devin White last year, or number 4, when Devin White came out, not whoever they took. So things are coming out. I don't know how much Mayock got to do because Gruden actually hired him, which is weird when the coach hires the GM anyway.
Yeah, and you got to feel like under Bisaccia, Gruden would have been given a fair shot. And yeah, I think Rich Bisaccia will find his way to getting another coaching job somewhere. I think if Bisaccia is going, then the Raiders must have a big coach in the pipeline because you're not going to take a small fry coach when you've already got a guy who's taken you to the playoffs, I guess. Yeah, but the Bengals are moving on, and the Bengals are probably the better team, and they looked really good when they were putting the points up on the day, moving down the field. I think the thing that sums up your point with the catch the most is the fact that Jamar Chase didn't get called for that push-off early in the game where he throws the guy like he throws the guy like right down the field, and it was probably only a little tap, and the veteran cornerback is trying to sell it fine, but it's still probably a offensive pass interference call in the regular season, but in the postseason they're letting them play.
Yep, and it's nothing against the Bengals. Congratulations. The refs I feel like they weighed in way too much on a playoff game, and we shouldn't even have to be talking about them. On to the ass whipping of the weekend. And I told you I thought the Bills were going to win this, and it wasn't going to be that close. I didn't see 30 points. I'll be honest. I did not see 30 points. And, dude, that 17 points for the Patriots is generous, the way that game played out.
I've been ride or die with the Bills all season, and then it comes to a playoff game, and I lost my faith in them. Like, what am I doing? And I picked the Bills, and I'm a disgrace, and I'm really sorry. Also, do you know what I noticed the other day? That we haven't had the 49ers in our top 10 ranking all season.
Yeah, because I never thought they were a top 10, but they're shutting me up.
Yeah, same. Yeah. But anyway, after making us look like fools. Yeah, Josh Allen put on a clinic. Guy's absolutely incredible. He's do you remember when we went on that podcast with in Canada for a little bit with
yes,
Reno, and we did our top 5
I don't remember the name of the podcast.
Yeah, me neither. But the top 5 quarterbacks, and Josh Allen was in there for me, and I was really fighting his cause in there. He's incredible, running the ball, throwing the ball. I didn't realize how quick he was until I watched him again in the playoffs, and it was amazing. What I like to see, though, like everybody knows how great Josh Allen is, and he's been spoken about ad nauseum in the press. They went to the run game. I put out a tweet, and I said, hey, nobody sleep on the fact that the Bills are actually running this ball, and that could be what's different about them. Like, Singletary looked good. Moss looked good. And I can't remember who the other running back was at this present moment in time. But all 3 of them looked good, and they were running the ball hard, and they committed to the run game, and their offensive line was moving people.
Yeah, that was just an all-out ass whooping. Bill Belichick was embarrassed after the game. I know people are like, he was classless. He didn't do a very good handshake. He's always classless, and he never does a really good handshake with the other coach. So I don't know what you expected after a loss, because he does it after a win.
Never mind getting his ass whooping by a division rival as well, like in home field. Yeah. The Bills Mafia showed up eventually. Like, there was a lot of tickets still on sale, wasn't there?
The Bildo showed up. Did you see the Bildo? Yeah. Somebody threw the Bildo on the field.
In the corner. You got to do it. Yeah, the Bills are dangerous if they can run the ball like that, I think. And it's almost like they just decided to not run the ball in the regular season to be able to add a wrinkle to their play calling in the postseason against Bill Belichick. They thought, right, we're into the playoffs. Let's just not run the ball for a while. Let's just stop running the ball for the last half of the season, so nobody thinks we can run the ball, and then we'll unleash the run. And it's not like they run for thousands of yards, and it was still down to Josh Allen's arm, but they ran it enough that Josh Allen had a lot of time to throw and open receivers to go to.
Well, we'll move on to the next game, and all I gotta say is crawl, Eagles, crawl. That was an awful performance. They looked horrible. They looked like the Eagles that every hater this year was saying the Eagles were going to be. They almost lived up to the negative hype. The play calling was atrocious, and Jalen Hurts looked bad.
They didn't deserve to be in the playoffs, realistically. When you look at some of the teams that missed out, that the Eagles weren't a playoff team. They feasted on, like the Cowboys feasted on as well, the other 2 dysfunctional franchises in the NFC East to get. I don't actually know how they did against the other ones. I know the Cowboys cleaned it up, but I'm pretty sure the Eagles got most of their wins against. They got at least 3 against the NFC East teams, I'm pretty sure. And they got some big wins in that time as well. They went on that run. You can't run the ball against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, which forces Jalen Hurts to throw the ball, and he's not that guy.
No, and I don't even think we need to beat that game to death, because it turned out exactly like most of us thought it would. And I'll just move on to the Steelers-Chiefs, because I want to say I watched this whole awful game all the way to zeros just to watch Big Ben throw his last pass. And for a second, I thought Andy Reid was going to look at his defense and go, let him score. I thought they were, because they were playing so far up and they were driving it down the field. And I thought Andy Reid's going to let him walk off with a score. And I don't know if I feel good or bad about that. And then it didn't happen. It was a good drive. And out of all of the losing teams, I'm pretty sure the Steelers scored the most points. They did. So Big Ben went out on a high note on the fact that he was so bad this season that he got to leave on a playoff run. Tomlin gets another playoffs under his belt. Steelers are probably another team that shouldn't have been in the playoffs, but peace, Big Ben. Have a good one.
Yeah, the Steelers are another one of those teams that, like, when you look at the, like, in the NFC, you can see how the Eagles made it. In the AFC, there was teams like the Chargers that didn't make it, the Colts that didn't make it, the Ravens because of the injuries, they didn't make it, the Browns because of their problems and injuries and things like that, they didn't make it. Like, you look at these rosters and you think, how aren't they in the playoffs when we've just seen the team get walked in the playoffs as well? Definitely interesting. What I just want to say about this Steelers team is they have a really good roster. Like, they have a really good roster that just needs a few finishing touches. Offensive line, which isn't something that you usually say about the Steelers, could do with a little bit of work. And then obviously they need a new quarterback. There's no secret there. But when you look at their wide receiver group, that's one of the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. It's got to be attractive to any team. And Najee Harris coming out of the backfield has been great this year. The Steelers' defense will always play tough. And there's no shame in getting walked by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs when you shouldn't have been in the playoffs to start with.
Well, all I got to say about the Chiefs is they're back.
That's it. That, like, they looked really, really good. Like, they looked incredible. And that's just, I'm not surprised that they turned it on for the playoffs, if I'm being perfectly honest. And it's nice to get a game against this. Like, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like, wheels were kind of falling off. They played 3 bad teams to finish their season out to get kind of the gears rolling. I mean, they nearly lost to the Jets, but that's by the by. But they played the Panthers twice and they played the Jets to kind of get the gears rolling. Then they play the Eagles to even get the gears rolling even further. It's nice for the Chiefs to get the engine sort of ticking over in the playoffs against a team that they were always going to beat by the looks of things.
Well, Maddie, I got to ask, because I think you were sleeping and didn't watch it till the next day. I could be wrong. But that Cardinals-Rams game was an ass whipping, and I'm really glad to see that Budda Baker's okay. T's and P's to Budda Baker, because that was scary on the field for a minute there. But the Rams look good, and I think Stafford only had like 205 or 220 yards, nothing spectacular. So I think they put an ass whooping on them. But I also think the Cardinals took the worst possible time to play their worst possible football.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Cardinals started really hot and they fell apart towards the end of the season. I think it's a coaching thing. I think Kingsbury needs to kind of maybe, like, Kingsbury shouldn't be losing his job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying maybe he needs to look at not going so hard in the first half of the season to kind of make sure his team gets to that second half playing its best football, maybe kind of work up to where they need to be rather than starting off hot, getting injured, and then nobody gets back in shape by the time you get to the playoffs. The Rams look great. The Rams looked, what we said with the Rams before the playoffs was all they need to do is find another running back to share some of the weight. Cam Akers comes back and goes absolutely insane. Played a fantastic game. OBJ is a big time. Like, he's not the guy that they're going to throw to every down. That's obviously Cooper Kupp. But in those big moments, third downs, touchdown plays, Matt Stafford's looking for OBJ. And I think this is a fantastic fit for him where he just plays big plays. He also had a great pass. I think kind of the energy of Sean McVay and the fact that he's going to let him throw a pass, that's only going to help OBJ's attitude in that game, in that Rams team as well. They looked really good. Like, out of all the teams, I would say they look the most complete because they did it to the Rams.
I do have to say, if any other quarterback played as bad as Kyler Murray did, they would be killing them. And for some reason, he's getting a pass.
I think he's getting a pass. He's getting a pass because of how brilliant the Rams' defensive line is, how terrible his offensive line was. But I agree, he shouldn't be getting a pass. I saw a really funny tweet yesterday, and it was Kyler Murray's out here making Mac Jones look elite after Mac Jones' terrible game in the against the Bills as well. Which I'm going to give Mac Jones a pass on that one because the Bills were just a better team altogether, and they have the better roster. But Kyler Murray, come on, man, you've got to play a little better than that. But
the best thing for Mac Jones is it's his rookie year, and he got to take a bad ass whooping in the playoffs. So he got to feel what the playoffs felt like. He felt what it feels like to take a beating in the playoffs. I think it's just going to make Mac Jones better. I think it'll make Kyler Murray better too, but it's weird how he seems to be getting a pass in the mainstream sports media.
Yeah, he's not getting a pass in the non-mainstream sports media. Trust me. In the kind of like meme pages, Twitter, those kind of things, like Kyler Murray's getting absolutely killed. And he's getting killed on this podcast because he wasn't good. Like, it wasn't good. How many times did they have to punt to start? Didn't they go 3 and out 4 times in a row? Something ridiculous like that. That pick 6 he threw when he was trying to run out of his own end zone and
take the fucking safety. Take the safety and let your defense do something. Don't give him 6.
Yeah, stop running about trying to get out of the end zone like that as well. Like, yeah, you're talented, but you're also injured. Like, you're not playing at 100%. Just throw that ball away. They were getting an ass whooping already. There's no need for you to throw a pick 6 to make your stats look even worse. I know that's a selfish way to look at it, but I'm a selfish guy.
But even when that happened in the game, giving up 2 points was way better than giving up 7. And you're still in it. So if you give up the 2 and you let your defense try to stop them, if they stop them, like, that was mitigating the snowball where you just threw it and you created the snowball. You know what I mean? Like, you just pushed the snowball faster down the hill. I couldn't believe that play while it was happening either. I was like, he did not just do that.
Yeah, it was pretty ropey. But the Rams look like I get digging in on the Cardinals, but they are a young team. They're probably not ready for the playoffs yet. JJ Watt got a sack. That was nice to see. But they're probably not ready for the playoffs yet. D-Hop was out as well. They could probably do with another experienced head in that team. But the Rams looked complete and really put the beating on them as well. I don't think it was all the Cardinals playing shit. I think that game more than any of them was just the Rams playing well.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that somehow AJ Green forgot how to play football.
Yeah. Like, I would understand if he wasn't as athletic, but his brains just seemed to have left him.
There were some things with AJ Green this year that just made me shake my head, but only one team's going to leave happy, and everybody else gets to start going, next year's our year.
Yeah, well, it's difficult for a Cowboys fan to say that at the minute until Mike McCarthy gets sacked. I'm going really hard on McCarthy here. I don't want to get sacked. I don't want anybody to lose their job. Put him in an advisory role, something like that. Like, he's done well enough managing his coaching staff, but let's give if it keeps Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore, then give Dan Quinn the head coaching job and stop him going to Denver, because no offense, Denver, but Dan Quinn would take the Dallas Cowboys job over the Denver job, surely.
Yeah, well, I do think you're going to lose Campbell this year. We'll see what happens with Moore. All right, guys, there you have it. That's our review of Wildcard Weekend. And stay tuned because we will be bringing you our preview of the divisional round. All right, guys, one world, one love. Deuces.
Cheerio.